What is up, Karma Nation? Welcome to our MLB DFS show for Monday, August 2nd. I am your host, Justin Bales, and if you're new here, what will be happening is I will break down my favorite pitchers, hitters, and stacks. I will go with pitchers first, stacks second, and then break down each position for who I like and who I believe are the best plays on the slate. If you enjoy our content, please go below, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click the little bell to turn on notifications so you always get our podcasts. Before we get into the breakdown of everything, I want everyone to leave me a comment of who your favorite pitcher or hitter or stack is, and we can kind of get a discussion going in the comments throughout the day as well. But just starting at pitcher tonight, I believe that the number one option is relatively obvious, at least to me it is. Tyler Mcgill, who at no point in time do I believe anyone thought was going to be the most expensive pitcher on literally any slate, is the most expensive pitcher, and he also is the best option. He's a sizable favorite. The game total set at only 7 runs. He has the best Vegas line of basically anyone on the entire slate. Obviously gets a matchup against the Miami Marlins, who were sellers at the deadline, who are not playing well. They have one of the lowest WOBAs over the last 14 days of anyone on the slate. The only two teams, I guess there's 3 teams below them, 2 of which are the Angels and the Texas Rangers. But I do believe that Mcgill, who actually has thrown well, I believe is an above average pitcher. And at strikeout upside in a great matchup is the number one option. I think you're probably going to start with him as your SP2 because it's a relatively small 7-game slate without any elite arms, as you can tell by Mcgill being the top option. Outside of him, I think there's a few guys you can pair him with. Eric Lauer against Pittsburgh, I don't have many issues with. Andrew Heaney against Baltimore, I don't have any issues with. I believe my favorite option is probably Dane Dunning against the Angels. I know he doesn't have the Vegas odds or anything, but he's thrown very well at home this season. He's only 6,300, and the Angels have been the second worst team on the entire slate. Only behind Texas, so it's not like I really expect him to pick up a win or anything. But I do believe that he is a very good arm, especially at home. And at 6,300, it's kind of hard to pass up when you can spend up at bats. Outside of them, I think that Michael Wacha is completely fine. I guess you're probably going to have to make a choice between Andrew Heaney and Michael Wacha because they're only 200 apart. If I had to pick, I believe I would side slightly with Heaney. He has more strikeout upside. I don't believe the matchup's quite as good, but I'm also not overly scared by Baltimore. So I know that Heaney's been bad on the season. At least he flashes upside, and all of his advanced metrics are relatively fine. He's due for positive regression in the second half of the season. His xFIP sits at 3.81 compared to Wacha's is over 4. Both their ERAs are relatively high. Wacha's is slightly lower than Heaney's, but Heaney's the guy that's going to see a ton of regression, positive regression. Outside of them, I think you can take like an odd shot on Josiah Gray. I do think that he's a reasonable option. I don't love the matchup against Philly, but I'm also not absurdly scared of them either. And I think that that's likely where I'm at. Anthony DeSclafani, I don't know if I mentioned him earlier because I would just play Tyler Mcgill. But I do believe that because of their price tags at 9.6 and 9.3, you can play DeSclafani and Mcgill together. Or if you're looking to get different in tournaments, because so many people will likely be playing Mcgill, I do think that Anthony DeSclafani against Arizona is 100% fine. On FanDuel, you have a few players that are just obviously way too cheap. Tyler Mcgill is priced up at the top. DeSclafani is the most expensive option there. At only 8,700, it's still way too cheap. Eric Lauer is down to 75. Andrew Heaney's at 76. Those guys are both way too cheap. And then again, Josiah Gray's down at 63. I know he's looked bad. It's limited starts. He has strikeout upside, and his advanced metrics suggest that he's gotten unlucky at this point so far. So I do believe that Josiah Gray makes a very good option, especially on FanDuel, where he's only 6,300 tonight. Moving to stacks, it's kind of tough. There's three that obviously stick out. They're by far better than everyone else. Truthfully, I think that you should probably stick to one of those three, even in tournaments, but I do believe that you can go elsewhere. The first one is the New York Yankees. They get a matchup against Jorge Lopez, who just hasn't been good. His advanced metrics aren't necessarily as bad as the way that he's throwing, but they're not good whatsoever. He gives up 1.5 home runs per nine. He doesn't really have strikeout or even swing and miss stuff. So the Yankees are going to be in a very good spot because that's obviously what they do as an offense. They love to strike out. So if Lopez can't miss bats, the Yankees, they make a pretty obvious choice. Moving down, the second tier, I feel, is between the Milwaukee Brewers and the San Francisco Giants. I like the Giants because of the matchup against Taylor Widener. I don't believe he's good. His ERA sits at 4.42. His xFIP is well above 5. It's the highest on the slate at 5.31. He gives up nearly 2 home runs per 9, and the Giants' offense has been on fire. The thing about Widener is he doesn't really get many strikeouts. He can occasionally miss bats. It's just that I'm not worried about it with the Giants lineup. And then on the other end, you have the Milwaukee Brewers playing against Bryce Wilson, who was recently traded from the Atlanta Braves. His ERA sits at 5.88. It's not good whatsoever. His advanced metrics back up that he's been throwing poorly. His xFIP is a 5.23. His home run per 9 is 1.87. There's just a lot to like about the Brewers tonight. Their offense has been playing relatively well. They don't strike out a lot. And Wilson's just not a pitcher that's going to miss bats regardless. So I feel like those three stacks are by far the top three. I think that there's a very wide gap between them and the Tampa Bay Rays, who I believe are probably fourth, just because Flexen isn't a good pitcher, but he also doesn't give up many home runs, so it kind of limits their upside. And then I do believe that the next top stack should probably be the Washington Nationals. They've been playing well. My big issue with them is that obviously they had a fire sale at the trade deadline, so it's not like they have the same offense over the last 2 weeks or anything. I do think against Ranger Suarez, who's expected to draw the start, but not expected to throw more than 3 innings. It's a decent spot. Suarez has been throwing well this season, but you never know what happens when they start to get extended. And then on top of that, they get a matchup against the Philly bullpen, which isn't bad, but they're also not necessarily a great pen either. So I do think Washington can be on your radar. It's just, once again, obviously the Yankees, the Brewers, and the Giants are the top three. I think in 4 and more or less in a tier of their own will be the Rays, and then followed by Washington. Moving to position by position. At catcher, I think it's relatively clear for me what I want to do. If you can get to Omar Narvaez at 4,500, he is by far my top option. I think right above him at 46, so only 100 difference, Gary Sanchez is completely fine. I just prefer Narvaez. Outside of that, you can use like Trey Barrera at 3,000. That's about where I'm sitting. If you want to use someone like Cal Raleigh at 2,200, just more or less to punt the position, I'm not going to tell you no. It's a relatively weak position. Outside of Narvaez, there's no one that really sticks out that I want to get in my lineups. So I have no issues with that. Or if you want to use someone like Pedro Severino, I'm fine with that, just because we know that the thing that Andrew Heaney struggles with is home runs, and Severino is a powerful righty against lefties. The big issue is he's no longer super cheap after, I believe he hit 2 home runs the other night. He's up to 3,800, so it's not like you're getting really a discount on him or anything, but I do think he's in play for tournaments. At first base, assuming Lamont Wade is in the lineup at 3,500, I think that price tag is relatively ridiculous. I think he's an easy play. If you aren't double spending up at pitcher, Anthony Rizzo at 4,700 is a great option basically any night, but the matchup against Lopez is just outstanding. And then you have a couple guys for Milwaukee that really stick out here in Eduardo Escobar and Rowdy Tellez. Escobar's first base, third base eligible. He's the expensive option. Rowdy Tellez is down to 3,000. So I think that both of them can be used here. Outside of that, I do believe you can use either of the Baltimore guys, Trey Mancini or Ryan Mountcastle, just because, like I said earlier, Haney does give up home runs and they're powerful options, especially against left-handed pitching. I think that G-Man Choi is relatively fine, and if you want to use someone like Brad Miller as a salary relief option, I wouldn't really talk you off of it. I would prefer Lamont Wade, assuming he's in the lineup and leading off significantly more than someone like Miller. But I do believe my favorite option at this very moment is going to be Anthony Rizzo at first. Second base is it's a little more interesting because there's several different ways you can go here. If you want to spend up, I think the clear-cut top option, just because there aren't many high-priced guys, is going to be Brandon Lowe. 5,700 is extremely expensive for him, but it's a good matchup against Chris Flexen. He hits right-handed pitching well. Obviously, he's expected to continue to lead off for Tampa Bay. I do believe he's in a very good spot. If you need to drop down a bit, I think that Colton Wong is probably the top option leading off from Milwaukee. We talked a million times about the matchup against Bryce Wilson. It's just an extremely good spot. And Colton Wong has been enjoying a very, very solid season when he's healthy. Outside of that, you can drop down even farther, assuming he's in the lineup at 3,700 for Alcides Escobar. He gets the solid matchup against Suarez. So I don't have any issues if you want to drop down there and try to save some money here. I do believe that a few other options that can be considered. Joey Wendell, it's really hard to pay $4,900 for Wendell when you can get Colton Wong for $500 cheaper. And then Gene Segura at $4,600, which once again, it's kind of difficult to pay for him when you can just get Colton Wong, especially for a cheaper price tag. And then super cheap that I can't imagine many people play, just because that we know that Tyler Mcgill is going to be one of the higher owned pitchers on the slate. Jazz Chisholm is only $3,200. That's way too cheap for his talent, and I do believe that he can be used in tournaments. I probably would not go there in cash games just because of the matchup on the slate, but it is a really good tournament play. At third base, I think you can start with DJ LeMahieu. He's back up to 5,100. We had him at a bit of a discount because he started the season out very poorly. He's leading off for the Yankees, at least that's what we're expecting, and he gets the obvious good matchup. Again, Eduardo Escobar at 5,400. I have no issues whatsoever with him. I think at third base, which for the majority of the season hasn't been a position that I like. More often than not, I don't come away liking very many players at third. That's kind of what's happening again tonight. LeMahieu and Escobar are kind of head and shoulders above everyone else for me. I think that I'm going to do whatever I can to get one of those two into my lineup anyway. Outside of that, Chris Bryant's 5,000. Obviously, I like the Giants. I do think that he's 100% in play. I believe that Kyle Seager, anytime he gets a matchup against a mediocre right-handed pitcher, which is what he gets tonight against Michael Wacha, he's also in play, and he's been one of the hotter third basemen in the MLB over his last few games. So that's probably the four that I would break this down into. If you need to save money here, I think you can go with someone like Tyler Wade, assuming he's in the lineup, just because you're getting a piece of the Yankees offense that really no one's going to play for less than $3,000. JD Davis is $3,900. I have no problems with that. But realistically, you're probably going to want to get one of DJ LeMahieu or Eduardo Escobar. And if you can't, Chris Bryant or Kyle Seager, I think, make very good options below them. Shortstop is it's pretty iffy tonight. I think the top option that I would say would be Brandon Crawford. I've been really high on Brandon Crawford this season. He's finally hitting home runs. He looks really good. I think it kind of depends on where he's hitting in the San Francisco lineup, assuming it's, I would hope that he can get to fifth. If he can't, sixth is fine. Below that, it starts to get iffy, but obviously gets the matchup against Widener that we really like. I believe that Willie Adames is 100% fine. He's 5,100. Gets a great matchup against Bryce Wilson and has been playing extremely well for Milwaukee basically since they traded for him. Those two, I feel, are well ahead of everyone else. Again, it's kind of weird to say that, but it's only a 7-game slate. It's not like we have a ton of options to choose from. Other players that I would consider, Gleyber Torres, I think Wander Franco is relatively fine if you want to take like an off shot, but at 100 more than Brandon Crawford, I would just play Crawford because it's not like people are really going to use him, I would assume. And then if you need to save a bit more money, Didi Gregorius is down to 3,600. I feel like he's kind of the guy where he's been relatively cheap all season, and it feels like for very good reason because he's had a terrible year. But, he can always hit right-handed pitching well, and it's not like Josiah Gray is at the point where he's an untouchable pitcher. In the outfield, there are plenty of options. We can start with the higher priced guys. I guess we'll go like 4,500 or above. I think the number one play would probably be Joey Gallo. I think you can make a case for like Aaron Judge as well. Judge is really good against bad pitching. It's just that I prefer Gallo in this situation. I think both can be used. We have other guys that we've talked about, such as like Chris Bryant, Brandon Lowe. They're both outfield eligible. Austin Meadows, I have no issues whatsoever with. I will never tell you not to play someone like Juan Soto or Bryce Harper, especially in these solid matchups. They're both very good options. That's probably about where I'm standing for the higher priced guys. Slightly under the 4,500, you have guys like Mike Yastrzemski and Giancarlo Stanton. I do really like both of those. Yastrzemski's kind of a guy that sticks out a little bit. He's one of my favorite options on the slate, especially in the matchup. I think you can also use, if you need like salary relief, you can use someone like Alex Dickerson. He's only 3,300. Assuming he's hitting in the top 5 of the San Fran order, I do believe that that's a solid play. You can even use someone like Brett Gardner. It's similar to the Tyler Wade play where he'll be in the lineup for the Yankees. He's going to be hitting late in the lineup. He's not a good hitter, but he gets the matchup and he gets low-owned exposure to what we assume will be the top offense on the slate, or at least one of them. Lorenzo Cain at 2,900 continues to be a bit underpriced. I think that he's a very good option. And there's more guys that you consider, or that you can consider at 2,200, like Victor Robles, Kevin Kiermaier at 2,400, Brad Miller we already talked about. They're all players that can be used. I don't have any real issues with them or anything, but they're not really top plays or anything for me. So before I go, I will give you guys a home run call tonight. I'm going to go with Mike Yastrzemski. I'll actually give 2. I'll give Yastrzemski and Brandon Crawford. I think that both of them will hit home runs for San Francisco. Shows why I'm so high on them as a stack overall. But once again, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Leave any comments, including your favorite players, below. And you can check out all of our content at dfskarma.com. We have core plays, we have articles, we have the final thoughts, we have a free chat room. All of this can be found in the description below. Just click below the fold to show more, and you can see all of that. And until then, good luck tonight.